Hello, I'm Mr. EpiX, and in this video I will take a look at Tristana, the Yordle Gunner. This video will cover her abilities, ability order, the reasons to pick Tristana, runes, masteries, items, and the general way of playing her. Let's start by looking at her passive. Draw a bead increases the range of Tristana's basic attacks, explosive charge and buster shot per level, starting out at the 550 range shared with the majority of ranged champions in the league, scaling all the way up to 669, which is slightly longer than Caitlyn's. This is part of the reason why she is very strong in the later stages of the game. Tristana's Q, Rapid Fire, grants her bonus attack speed for 5 seconds from 30% to 110% on rank 5. Rapid Fire is very useful for short trades or pushes since it does not cost any mana. It does however have a somewhat long cooldown, so there is a window where Tristana isn't very threatening once she's used it. Her W, Rocket Jump, lets her jump to a target location and damage anyone she lands on. As a marksman, you generally want to use it to escape or position yourself in fights, but it has a very useful second part of the ability. For every kill or assist that Tristana gets, her Rocket Jump's cooldown is reset. This lets her chase and clean up fights very quickly if she gets a kill, and also makes for flashy escapes if she can finish someone off in a skirmish. Tristana's E, Explosive Charge, has two parts. The passive makes all enemies slain by Tristana's basic attacks explode, dealing magic damage to any nearby enemies. This takes a bit of getting used to, especially when last hitting under turrets. It also means that Tristana always pushes the lanes automatically when farming, making freezing the lane more difficult. The active part lets Tristana place an explosive charge on a target enemy or enemy turret. This charge detonates after 4 seconds for physical damage, which can be increased by 30% for each basic attack or ability that Tristana manages to hit on the target, up to an increase of 120% for 4 hits. This ability lets her push both minions and towers very quickly, and can also be used to harass enemies trying to hide because the radius of the explosion is doubled when used on turrets. Another part of this ability is that, just like kills and assists, detonating an explosive charge with max stacks on an enemy champion resets her rocket jump cooldown, which makes the skilled Tristana very slippery. Her ultimate, Buster Shot, knocks a target and all enemies around them backwards, dealing a burst of magic damage to the chosen target. This is mainly used for trying to stay safe in fights and knocking scary people away from you, but it can also be used as a finisher to pick up kills, or things like knocking someone into the rest of your team to start off a fight. When playing Tristana, you want to max your explosive charge first. The reason for this is simply that it's the best way to gain more damage in terms of ranking your abilities. Maxing Rapid Fire is not as reliable if you cannot use the whole attack speed bonus, and it simply does not increase your overall damage as much. Rocket Jump does not scale very well, and except for flashy plays, it's mostly used as an escape tool. Okay, so now we know how she works, but why do we want to play her? When is Tristana a good pick? Short answer, pretty much always. She suits the majority of team compositions in the game, and unless you need someone to do a specific job very well, she's a good pick. Her late game is incredible and one of the best out of all AD carries because of her range, her ability to stay safe without much peel, and her scary resets for cleaning up teamfights. So if you need someone to siege towers, be able to play safely while still dishing out damage to the enemy team, and have a solid presence throughout the game, Tristana is the champion for you. So you might be asking, what's her weaknesses? Her mid-game can be kind of lacking if you don't get ahead compared to some champions like Lucian or Misfortune, who either spike earlier or have more teamfight presence because of their kit. Until you have a few items that help you out with crits, Rapid Fire doesn't get you the damage boost that you really want for fights. She also has very vulnerable windows in lane when her abilities are on cooldown. This means that if you can force her to use Explosive Charge and Rapid Fire, or even her Rocket Jump, you can fight her quite safely for roughly 15 seconds, assuming you didn't also use all of your abilities. For runes for Tristana, you use the most common AD carry rune page with attack damage marks, armor seals, magic resist glyphs, and attack speed quints. There are some variations that you can do in case you feel like you need more or less magic resist, such as swapping for scaling magic resist or attack speed glyphs, but unless you know that you're up against a bot lane without magic damage or such, I would recommend sticking to these. As for masteries, I will go through 2 variations that you can choose between depending on your playstyle. The first ones are the masteries I currently use on Tristana on patch 6.1. I choose Thunderlord's Decree because I like being able to utilize it earlier in the game, compared to the second example which has Warlord's Bloodlust. You can also choose between them depending on what type of game you think it's going to be. If you think it's going to go late game, Warlord's Bloodlust gives you more power for fighting once you get the crit items. As for the actual points, it's a 12-18-0 page. You will want to start by taking Fury for the attack speed. I like taking Double-Edged Sword on the second row on Tristana because she can be safe in fights, but Feast can be worth taking instead if you want some sustain. For the third row I go with Vampirism for the 2% lifesteal throughout the game over scaling stats from natural talent. My opinion is that in general as an AD carry it's good to take Bounty Hunter since you will most likely be getting kills on different people. If you get 2 kills on the Bounty Hunter mastery by mid-game, you have a permanent damage increase almost equal to the Oppressor mastery, which only works on CC targets. It won't matter very much if you miss out on the damage early game, since the percentage increase you get before having a few items is so small. If you feel like Oppressor works better for you or for the team composition you have, go for that instead. Don't forget that Masteries can be adapted on the fly for the game you're going into. You can always swap a point here and there to work around enemy strengths or improving your own. The Cunning tree has less choices for AD carries. You go Savagery for last hitting, Secret Stash for biscuits and durations, and Merciless for late game fighting. Dangerous Game on the 4th row is the only real option here. It's a solid mastery in general and even more so on Tristana with her jump resets, which lets her have more kill participation in fights. As Tristana you don't need cooldown reduction very much, so Precision for the armor and magic pen is great, and then you finish the page with Thunderlord's Decree. The second page is going to be more late game focused with Warlord's Bloodlust. You take the same points in both trees, but go 18-12-0 instead, picking up the 7% armor penetration in the Ferocity tree instead of the flat one in Cunning. The reason the majority of people don't run this page is because Warlord's Bloodlust does not help until you actually crit, meaning that for the first part of the game it's not going to trigger. This obviously puts you at a slight disadvantage during laning phase, but if you can get your Infinity Edge and Seal item, you're good to go, and Warlord's Bloodlust will be stronger than Thunderlord's Decree. Let's move on to item builds. What's good on Tristana? As mentioned, Tristana synergizes very well with crit because of her rapid fire and the fact that she's very auto-attack reliant compared to spell slingers like Lucian or Corki, so her build is more or less a standard AD carry one. Your 6 items will look something like this, with Infinity Edge, Rapid Fire Cannon, Berserker Greaves, Bloodthirster, Lord Dominic's Regards, and Mercurial Scimitar. Items should be adapted to what you need the most during the game, but your build order should sort of follow these items. Start out by getting a BF Sword and a Pickaxe in the order you can afford them, then look to build either Rapid Fire Cannon or Static Shiv before finishing the Infinity Edge, with Static Shiv being the very situational one if you're heavily lacking wave clear. Tristana with Rapid Fire Cannon is very strong when she gets her levels on the passive for the range, and I wouldn't really recommend swapping it for something else unless you really know that you need to. The reason you're waiting with finishing the Infinity Edge is that it does not give more AD once you finish the item. What you get for the 1400 gold that you spend for completing it is simply the 20% crit and the critical damage increase. This means that effectively 80% of all attacks won't be any different and you could get at least a seal in between. This is more of a general tip for AD carries in general and less for Tristana because of her rapid fire, but I still like building this way. A typical starting order for my build when I play Tristana will look like this. It heavily depends on how much gold I get when backing. Sometimes I get Berserker Greaves earlier and sometimes I wait with them until after completing my item spike. But let's look at what items to consider after the core build. Since Tristana has a built-in attack speed steroid with a rapid fire, she synergizes well with AD, and once she has her Infinity Edge and completed seal item, it's good to continue to build with the Bloodthirster. Bloodthirster is sort of a pseudo-defensive item with the shield and the lifesteal, which is great to pick up after a few full damage items, but if the enemies have started to build armor, pick up a Last Whisper. Only if they did though. Last Whisper is cheap, but only works for bonus armor from items, runes and masteries. This means that you can basically wait with building this until they build armor, because it doesn't help that much otherwise. After Bloodthirster and upgrading Last Whisper to most likely Lord Dominic's Regards, unless they have a lot of healing, there is only one item left to get. This heavily depends on the game, but to finish off your build you have a few items to choose between. Either you go the risky way and get another damage item, or you can get a defensive one like Banshee's Veil or Guardian Angel. If you want both and you're confident in your cleansing skills, finish off with a Mercurial Scimitar. Here is a bunch of items to choose between for the last one, each having its own situation to be built for. I hope this video helped you figure out something new about Tristana. If you have any questions or if you have a champion or something else you'd like to see me do a video on next, feel free to drop a comment below. Thanks for watching and I will see you on Summoner's Rift.